There is a lot I want to say about BumbleBY in my retrospective series, so this video isn't going to be a complete analysis on the ship. Instead, it's going to be mostly an analysis on the means by which it finally sailed. If you want other comments I've made about BumbleBY where I go more in depth about the relationship, I'm sorry! You won't find that video because I privated it due to a statement I'm ashamed to have made during the middle parts of my adolescence. I was a stupid 16-year-old and I have to hold myself accountable. Anyways, many shows are privy to what we call a plot contrivance, and RWBY is no exception. I plan to make a video going over how dangerous contrivances can actually be, but to sum it up, the reason why they can be so bad is because it gives people the impression that a writer is just forcing the plot to go a certain direction, instead of allowing it to unravel naturally. Granted, if they want the plot to go a certain way, then it's their responsibility to lay out all the groundwork. You'll see when I release part 2 of my RWBY series that I'll go into how Volume 2's plot is held together by a thread because of how forced its drama is and how it never needed to be written that way when you look back at it retrospectively. Now, I bring up the issue of contrivances since they play a heavy role in the BumbleBY romance. Just recently, it came to the satisfying conclusion we've been waiting years for. Blake and Yang exchanged those few words that could melt the heart of any hopeless romantic. The music was phenomenal, and the visuals were breathtaking. Honestly, this is a pretty sweet way to finally let a ship sail. Well, it's sweet when you don't think about the circumstances in which the wind for the ship's sails were created. Never in my time of engaging with romances have I ever seen a ship being resolved by the worst of all plot contrivances, the Deus Ex Machina. Long story short, RWBY being a subversion of fairy tales is officially canon, or at least has been canon since Volume 3. Essentially, the world of Remnant has its own fairy tales that coexist with the canon of the world itself. For example, the story of the Four Maidens being a true story that holds a lot of weight on the plot. Volume 9 takes place in a fairy tale world, which is a very cool concept, except for the fact that at the moment it's very neglectful of some of the consequences of Volume 8. The issue our protagonists are faced with is finding out how they'll get out whilst battling the shenanigans the Ever After throws at them. Oh boy, the shenanigans. I'm not going to go too in-depth about what they face. I'm just going to talk about what was recently shown in episode 6. So the gang just reunited with Jean, who's super old because of this weird clock fruit thingy that sent him back in time for reasons. They then start heading back to Jean's village, and on the way, he expresses why he doesn't like this Donnie called the Curious Cat. The Curious Cat then comes, and the gang ask him to explain why he knows John, and then a thunderstorm occurs. This thunderstorm is the Deus Ex Machina. A Deus Ex Machina, as defined by Wikipedia, is a plot device whereby a seemingly unsolvable problem in a story is suddenly and/or abruptly resolved by an unexpected and unlikely occurrence. Essentially, this occurrence forces a resolution in the plot because we need some way for the heroes to win. Now, not all Deus Ex Machinas are bad. Let's say a character is getting their butt whooped by a villain, and then an even powerfuler villain comes and whoops the weaker villains, but it could be used as a representation of how much further our protagonists have to go in order to achieve their goals. However, in many cases, they make payoffs feel kinda anticlimactic in a way, since they remove a lot of the agency that characters were showcasing throughout a story. So instead of a villain who has trained for years getting beaten by someone stronger than them, someone who's constantly earned their power throughout that specific arc of storytelling, they get beaten by the power of friendship. This thunderstorm is a Deus Ex Machina because it outright presented characters with the exact problems they're facing in an illusion world that makes the metaphorical literal, and the only ways they could have gotten out were if they faced their problems or waited for the storm to cease. In the layman's terms, they were conveniently given a platform that forced them to confront their issues instead of them naturally unraveling throughout the plot of this volume. So, whilst everyone was teleported to the pathway where they could see visions of themselves and be reminded of their past failures, Blake and Yang were conveniently teleported to 2 incomplete bridges, and they could only be united if they simply confessed their love for one another in the most tropey way imaginable.
All hours of the day, all hours of the night, no matter what I'm doing, my life is interrupted by this fucking bullshit.
I was writhing in agony when I saw this. This moment didn't feel deserved. Just recording in post. Let's be honest, this moment was never going to feel deserved. I will never be able to look in the mirror and say that this moment was the culmination of everything the writers tried to establish. Don't get me wrong, BumbleBY has always been poorly developed, but they barely bring up the things that were used to establish this romance in the first place. Not once did they ever mention how their dynamic drastically changed after the Adam incident. You know, the most impactful moment in their relationship. You know, that incredible shared sense of catharsis they had over overcoming a trauma they both bore. You'd think they'd mention how things were different. Not only did they manage to patch things up by not speaking to each other, but they treated each other much more intimately than before without questioning why that was the case. They were complimenting each other more often. They spent a lot more time together. Heck, the people they're around started noticing this. You know, classic romance things. You think back to specific instances in your story where you truly saw what you love in a person and how that was reinforced since you were able to overcome negative experiences with them. Instead, they freaking speak in general terms like, "You've always been so funny. You've always been so clever. You've always been so brave. I think you're cute. Oh my gosh, marry me." Some of these statements seemed a bit contradictory considering the stuff that's happened throughout the series, and others felt vague and disconnected since they were so broad and open to interpretation. A lot of people's issue with how the ship was being established was that Blake and Yang didn't speak to each other about their feelings properly, and all that we've been subject to are your run-of-the-mill rom-com tropes. Honestly, using rom-com tropes is fine in and of themselves. They make establishing romantic feelings easy, but what the writers keep forgetting is that Blake and Yang's relationship is so complicated. I'm kinda miffed because I feel like the solution to their problem shouldn't have been as simple as confessing their feelings for one another. Believe it or not, relationships aren't as simple as hugs and kisses. They're a lot of work, and the most important aspect of making them work is communication. There's a lot of baggage on both Yang and Blake's ends that they need to properly sort out, and barely any acknowledgement of that has been made. Despite this interaction between them being incredibly forced, saying incredibly forced feels like an understatement, it could have actually been used as an opportunity to finally address that thing everyone has been complaining about. Let this video be a reminder. If you want a good product to be sold to you, don't look at it with rose-tinted glasses. I am glad that BumbleBY sailed, but that doesn't mean I mustn't acknowledge the faults in its execution. Deus Ex Machina. How, oh my freaking gosh, how do you resolve a romance with a bloody Deus Ex Machina? Just a quick shout out to RWBY real quick. This wasn't the video I wanted to debut the Mirakami Unten avatar design, but I realized that the Mato Seihei no Slave video is coming out much later at some point, right? So yeah, I think I commissioned this thing too early. I just got tired of waiting around and just having it chill in my file library. I've been so tempted. I was tempted to use it in the El Camino video as well, and I was also tempted to use it in the upcoming RWBY video. But now that this one's out, I have an excuse to actually use it now. So yeah, shout out to RWBY. His links will be down in the descriptions. Anyways, take care. And like and subscribe. Apparently you have to say that in order to, you know, get people to subscribe to you. Ciao.